So I've got a question I want to ask anybody that's currently using Elementor and considering transitioning over to version 4. This isn't a dig or a pop at Elementor. It's a serious question that I would love to get some feedback on because I see the question come up time and time again, or difficulties between transitioning from V3 to V4 and some of the hurdles that people are coming across and workarounds that have to be put in place and so on. And I just want to kind of find out the kind of thought process and reasoning by people that are actually looking to continue using Elementor and try and transition into version 4 with the limitations you currently have there. Now, a post popped up on my Facebook group a couple of days ago, and I've just taken a look over it. And it's the struggles between trying to get between V3 and V4 and how the design system or the styles, the variables and classes and so on are not necessarily working correctly between the two methods, and there has to be workarounds and so on. So my question really comes down to it. If you've got to spend the time now to change how you build websites, moving over from V3 to V4 and the atomic elements and the design system and the classes and variables and so on. We know that at this point in time, and it has been for several months, and I see it going on for quite a while yet, you are kind of caught between two different systems. You have to use V3 for certain things because V4 still isn't fully featured. And as we can see by the post that I'll leave on screen here, I will anonymize it, obviously. You can see that there's quirks and foibles between how you can work by employing both of those different methods in one build. So the question comes down to, if you're going to spend the time to learn how to use frameworks, classes, variables, the atomic elements, as it were, and all those kinds of things, and the system still isn't 100% fully featured, why? Why spend that amount of time on something that you are continually going to have to keep learning and modifying as they roll out new features, which potentially may change how you work, and things that you may learn now you might have to go back and relearn because they change them. This happens with software development. It does. It's a natural thing. Well, if you're going to spend the time learning how to build sites like that, in the same way you had to learn how to use CSS Grid and Flexbox and so on when they moved away from the containers and so on, why not learn something that has a mature tool set that has been working and building in this way since pretty much its inception? Now, you're probably going to think, Paul, you're probably going to say bricks because you want us to move away from Elementor into bricks. Honestly, I have no care if you want to stay with Elementor whatsoever. I get no financial reward from getting you to move over to bricks or tools like that. I'm simply asking a question of the time investment that you have to make into learning and upskilling, and you still don't have a fully featured tool set there to work with. So you are kind of working in a, pardon the French, bastardized way of working between two different systems, V3, V4, and the quirks that come where things don't necessarily work perfectly between the two. But whether you move over to something like Bricks or a tool like Mosaic, for example, which already has design systems, CSS classes, variables, and all that kind of thing built in from the get-go, and the same thing goes with CSS Grid and Flexbox and so on, all those kinds of technologies that are rolling out into V4 are all already in there, and they're tested, and they're built from the ground up, instead of being sort of pushed into an existing system where you kind of have that hybrid approach between V3 and V4 and all the quirks and foibles that come with it. Would it not make more sense to buy into a tool that gives you all those options? And you may think that, but that has an additional cost associated with it. And absolutely, of course it does. But when you consider that Bricks is still running a lifetime deal if you want to buy into it, you don't have to, but you can do. Mosaic, I think, is still running a lifetime deal. And if you want more advanced tools, then you've got things like Build Areas, for example, which has the same kind of tools built in. Plus the fact that it is a more developer-oriented tool. So for a lot of people, that's a bit of a turn-off. Whereas something like Mosaic and or Bricks, while they have a little bit of a learning curve, you're already going through a similar learning curve here by moving over to atomic elements and all the options that are available in V4 and will be available in V4. So to go back to my question, is there a real reason why you are sticking with Elementor, moving over to V4, dealing with having to have a hybrid approach between V3 and V4 and the quirks that are potentially there between the two, over looking at an alternative tool that is more mature in these areas, and you have to kind of relearn anyway. So you're spending time learning things. So it's not like you're just suddenly going to go from one to another with no learning in between. You have to learn how these things work and understand CSS frameworks, variables, classes, and how that impacts a site design. With Elementor V4, it's not there yet. It simply isn't there yet. Whereas these other tools, it has been for several years. Mosaic, not so much, so obviously it's a newer tool. But it was built with that in its foundation. Elementor is not doing that. Bricks pretty much had that built in its foundation right back in V1, when it was still very, very early. And lots of other tools are approaching web design the same way. Now, if you are an AI user and you're moving over to AI completely, there's no need to comment down below. I'm not asking you if you are preferring to use AI over using a tool like Elementor's on. There's a simple question here that doesn't involve AI. So if you want to just hop on the keyboard and start going, I'm using AI, I'm going to use these, I don't care. I just don't care. That's a different conversation for a different video, and we don't need to worry about it. Let's park that, put your keyboard down, and get on with the rest of your day. For those Elementor users that are still working with Elementor and either are transitioning to V4 or considering transitioning to V4, or have literally just put it off because you don't like the idea of it, drop a comment down below. Let me have your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions, and what you're finding if you are transitioning to V4, or if you've made the leap away from Elementor because of V4 and you've moved over to other tools like Bricks, Mosaic, Breakdance, and so on. Drop a comment down below and let me know your journey so far. As always, all applicable links are in the description down below. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts. Until next time, take care.